Good day, everybody. It's Nicolaas van Wyk speaking. I'm the CEO of CIBA and also the editor for Accounting Weekly. Today I have with me my guest, Brian Kazungu, author and business developer. I'll explain how I met Brian and engaged with him to be on this podcast today. But before I hand over to Brian, a little bit about Accounting Weekly. Accounting Weekly is the publication of the Chartered Institute for Business Accountants. It's a publication dedicated to accountants in practice and tax practitioners, providing services to the public. We assist with various tools and guidelines to enable the accountant in practice to better service his clients, covering compilation engagements, various tax issues, e-filing issues experienced by tax practitioners and the like. We learn and get ideas from practitioners. They might be struggling with a particular issue that's provided to us. We investigate it with our experts, and then we present solutions to the broader accounting practitioner market in South Africa and Namibia. I'm also the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Business Accountants. I've started my stint back in 2013. CIBA itself started in 1987. The 80s was a very interesting period within the accounting profession, with most of the professional bodies that we see today starting in one way or another in the 1980s, and I think it had to do with the Closed Corporation Act, which for many years was the first alternative to company law. And that's what we see each time there's a new piece of legislation, whether it's a Tax Administration Act or some change, then it creates opportunities for professionals and professional bodies. And hence, CIBA is a professional body with designations covering from bookkeepers to financial administrators, general accountants, financial managers and chief financial officers, and then obviously also accountants in practice and tax practitioners. So it's quite a wide array of things that we cover at CIBA. You're welcome to go to our website, it's myciba.org, and then read a little bit more about us. Now, how did I then come to meet Brian? I wrote a blog, not a blog, a LinkedIn post. I'm just going to read it to the audience. It is something that I have been noticing, but as I read through my post, you'll see how I then connected with Brian. So here's what I wrote. At many meetings I've been to, speakers promote investing in green funds as if it's the best thing ever, saying it will definitely deliver a better return on investment. But this got me thinking, how often do people make rules or decisions based on a good story or a gut feeling, even when the facts don't really support it? It's like when someone tells you something that sounds right, so you believe it, but it might not actually be true for everyone or every situation. It's important to check if there's a real proof before believing that something will work out just because it sounds like it should. And then I made the statement, don't drive ESG based on the argument of higher returns. It's rather why we need an alternative economic model. And then I linked to an article that some academic published on LinkedIn, answering the question which we often hear, that companies that adopt green or go green and adopt green technologies perform better, when in fact the research shows differently. It's not always, and I'm not advocating for bad governance, I'm just stating a scientific fact. It's not always companies that are well governed that make better returns. I think from my environment, working within the accounting profession, and accountants work with IFRS and IFRS for SME, and then anecdotally you would hear people say, especially from the standard setters, that if companies follow IFRS, then they'll have higher returns, or if companies follow IFRS, then the country would get better foreign direct investments. But if you do actually the research, you see the opposite is true. It's not always the case that following a governance standard or a IFRS standard means that your country will increase its GDP, because there's a lot of other factors involved that you need to consider. So it's a complex scenario, complex situation. And then Brian responded by saying he broadly agreed with the concept or the idea I'm sharing, And then he wrote, there is a great need for the development and adoption of decision tools that helps in such scenarios. For example, in the article below, I highlight the importance of what I call the smart decision toolkit, which helps under these circumstances. And he linked, and I'm happy that he shared with it. It's actually a publication in medium.com. And the article was entitled, If You Are a Smart Thinker, Let's Build the Doctor Congruence Platform Together. And that is, how do you make decisions in a complex scenario and making sure you consider everything and then make the most efficient decision. And that is then what led to our conversation, Brian. And thank you very much for joining me. Let's start off by giving a brief background about yourself, your career development maybe, what you studied and what you're currently doing. And then we'll move on to the second phase, this article of yours about decision making. Brian.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nicolaas. And yeah, I remember very well we had that conversation on when I commented on the post that you have actually been participating on LinkedIn. And yeah, but basically, Brian Kazungu, that's my name, and I'm a media person. I'm a business developer at BNM Elite. It's an accounting firm. So prior to our conversation on LinkedIn, I'm sure we had an encounter at the the budget speech update that was done recently at that was in Pretoria, I believe. Yeah, but basically, I'm a media person. I'm a business developer, and that is what I do. I'm also an author. I've written several books, one of which I highlighted on your post in the Smart Decision Handbook. But on that, in that book, actually, there is a Smart Decision Toolkit, which I believe I'll have a chance to give a hint on what is it about and how it can help, even in issues to do with the subject which you were discussing that day on ESG and many other matters.
Yeah, now I'm happy that we met at the budget speech. And I see in your LinkedIn profile, you were also in the media. You had as a journalist and currently into business development and writing this book. Now, what motivated you, Brian, to write this book about decision making?
Yeah, so basically the book decision making, as a media person, and you dealing with information basically most of the time. It's all about information dissemination, and I understand that any decision that is being made in any platform, in any organization, including CIBA and probably BNM Elite, where I am, uh, the basis of decision is information. So this is the basic motivation that was behind. If people have the basic tools to help them make a decision, because at the end of the day, what makes other people make good decisions, what make other people make bad decisions? Like, for example, you highlighted on the issue that it's not always that let's say a company which is adopting IFRS is the one that can succeed, and probably the company that is probably on carbon credits, and let's say a country which is on carbon credits, is it the company which is has got much GDP or etc. So if people adopt IFRS or carbon credits or any decision, be it political in nature or whatsoever, what have they used to come to a decision? It is information. So if information is that important in making decisions, is it that when we make different decisions, are we exposed to different information, or we are exposed to different tools that can help us uh, analyze and apply information? So basically, that is the motivation behind the use of information, the basic principles that we can adopt to use to analyze and to use information before we apply it in our decisions.
Thank you, Brian. And I'm just reading one of your articles again, the three short books. I think there was this. It starts with managing your gift, the Smart Decision Handbook and the Universal Customer. How do these three relate to each other?
Oh, okay. The Smart Decision Handbook, like I have highlighted before, basically what it talks about is information management. How do people that most of the decisions that are done, they are not done based on proper thinking. And some people would then look at me and say, but I thought of what I did. Then the issue now has to go again to another stage, whereby if you said you thought about what you did, can we define what is thinking? You see, now the issue can be, yes, you may think, you may assume you thought, but when we put the definition of thinking, would you still continue to say you thought about what you did before you acted on it? So basically that book has that content which helps people to think. Like basically in that book, what I explain, I say thinking simply refers to the open-minded and objective processing of information towards effective decision making and informed action. So now let me come to the other two books which you highlighted, which you mentioned, Managing Your Gift, and then the Universal Customer Manual. So what I am explaining in these books, especially in the Universal Customer Manual, is so many people that are in business may, or the people that are involved in customer relations may lack the basic definition of the things that may help them to attend to customers. Yes, there are technical definitions that we get. Let's say you are at a college, you are at the university. There are technical terms that we get from these places on defining a customer. But basically, when we get to the real environment, when we get to an environment, like for example, I once worked in the in a retail setup. So as part of my interview in that job, I was asked, what is a customer? The technical definition of customer, the definition that I had learned from school. But the manager in that organization, what he said to me is, he said, here, a customer is anybody who is here in this, because it was a retail setup. He says, anybody you see here, whether it's buying or not, is a customer. All what we need to do is to make sure that our customers, those that can buy right now, can buy. But those who cannot buy now, they can buy tomorrow. So yes, that is not the basic definition of a customer that we knew, or probably that cannot be the best definition of a customer that we can adopt. But it sheds a clearer picture in that small environment. If you are to attend to customers on behalf of this organization, this is the perspective of a customer that you have. But now from that, based on the definitions that we learn from school and the definitions that we get when we are at work, I said, why can I not develop what do you call it, which is best for the SMEs, and so that they can adopt a basic definition which helps them to attend to customers. If you have a definition, it helps you to attend to a certain situation, be it when attending to an opportunity, or you are trying to fight against a threat that an organization or you as a person is facing. The definition of something helps you to decide or to act. Then let me go to the book, Managing Your Gift. In that book, basically what I'm saying is we are gifted differently. And, as people, somehow can be, let's say, the president of a country, and then you are not fulfilled as an individual, or you can be in a certain organization or in a certain environment, and yet you are still not fulfilled. You still believe that there's something missing, man. I don't know. I just don't understand what is it that I don't have, even if I seem to have the things that traditionally everybody may like to have. I may have this car, I may have this house, I may have the other thing, but I don't feel fulfilled. So in that book, I was saying, the sometimes lack of fulfillment can be attributed to lack of understanding of what is it that naturally as a person you are gifted to do. Yes, there are some things that you can be trained and then you master to do, but this cannot give you the fulfillment that you may get when actually you are pursuing something in line with your gift. For example, I am an author, even though yes, I've studied, I've did some studies in the media, I've did some studies in the business field. But when I write, when I am in the field where I'm writing as an author, I feel so much fulfilled. Like I find it so easy to write, because so now it helps me to get fulfilled in the other things. But if I can pursue, let's say, the business world as a business developer, or I can pursue the other things and leave writing, I may not get the fulfillment that can be attributed to a person when this person is following the passion that is associated with a gift. Look at musicians, look at footballers, look at other environments where people pursue a career based on gift. We get to probably enjoy watching them. You get to enjoy watching a singer. But this singer can be actually a qualified accountant somehow, but still finds time to sing, because still pursuing your gift while you in pursuing any other thing can have an element in how you feel and get fulfilled in life. So basically, these books, I said these three little books because they are short. You can read them within a short time, and they can actually challenge your perspective about life, about decisions that people are making, about the customer service that you get when you get to an organization. You start to get worried. If I have an issue, if I get to a certain organization, the way they treat people, the way they treat me and other people is different from this other organization. What could be the dynamic? So these short books, the main bedrock behind them is the redefinition of things that we are used to knowing from a different perspective. Now I just tried to put a simple definition that anybody, young, old, educated or not, you can quickly understand something easily. So basically, this is the connection and the basis behind these three books that you mentioned.
And those three books actually align with each other. As you were speaking, I can formalize these concepts in my mind, knowing who you are and knowing yourself, then how to make decisions, and then lastly, who to serve. So they
Yes.
do form a nice triangle.
Yes,
Your current
exactly.
your decision-making book, so I can really recommend that. I think it's a good way to a good reference point. I think we go to work and we're so overwhelmed with our daily tasks that we sometimes forget the foundational aspects of what it means to be human. And then we just start to make decisions in a very mechanical way.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think a few times you mentioned definitions. And that's also something that I discovered now. It took me many, many years. I'm now 50, 51, and it took me many years. So if I can give this advice to young people, start with most misunderstandings or conflict, whether it's in your family or with friends or with colleagues or in business. It's about misunderstanding, and misunderstandings arise because you didn't agree the definitions before you started the discussion.
Exactly.
So basically, you're talking about different things. And then it sounds easy, but if you come to a definition, then it's difficult to define something accurately. And I think that's what some of the philosophers, I'm not a philosopher expert, but I've read a little bit about, and it's difficult to define something, to know what exactly it is. And you first have to understand that, and then you can start making better decisions. But it's difficult in a fast-moving business environment. So I'm just reading your article again. I think it's a summary or explanation of the Smart Decision Handbook. I think we'll talk now about how people can obtain this. Maybe they can just contact you on LinkedIn. It's Brian Kazungu, Kazungu. In that article, you highlight 10, I'm just going to read here. It's a decision-making tool, and you highlight here 10 questions that help you to process the information you have about any subject in order for you to understand it better. And I think it's a nice systematic way. I don't know whether you still have those 10 things with you. Maybe I can read them. But if you can, maybe just discuss those 10 steps that a person can take in for better decision making.
Okay. No problem. We can do that. Yeah, on my side, I have the same content as well.
All right, so it starts with, you said number one is, what is the thing? Who is this person?
Okay, so now, what when I came to this conclusion, I based these 10 questions on what I termed as a fundamental congruence checklist. By fundamental, I draw to the point that the basics. For example, when you were mentioning, sometimes when we have a problem that we want to solve, or when we have a disagreement, the issue is probably when we boil down to the definition, we may find that we were discussing about something different. That is why I never understood you and you never understood me. But when we start to discuss on something which we now have a common understanding, we start now to have points that align to that issue. So that is why I said these 10 points are based on what I said is a fundamental congruence checklist. A fundamental congruence checklist, whereby the fundamentals of everything needs to be there before you decide. And by congruence, this is the harmony that really has to be there, because if the basics are clear and we have a harmony on what they are about, then we can decide easily. So now when we come to the point where I'm saying, what is this thing, or who is this person? This helps us to start the decision-making process. What is this thing that we want to solve? For example, what put us together on that LinkedIn post was your interest in ESG, my interest in ESG. To understand, is really ESG that important, or is its importance that clearly clarified or explained? So when we start to go down to the fact of understanding what is ESG, what is it? What is ESG? If we are clear on what it is, then we may understand the subject better. But remember, there are 10 points here. The second point says, what does, if it is a person, okay, let's say we're discussing about ESG, or for example, let's say we're talking about accounting. So we are on Accounting Weekly. If we have to ask a question, what is this thing? We say it is accounting. Then what does accounting do and how does it do so? This question can help us and can even also help accountants to be effective in their work, because if you know what you are doing and you know what it does, let's say to your client, and you know how it is done, that is the second step when you need to decide on something. So when I listed these 10 points, I came to the belief that if you have these 10 questions and you answer them, then your decision is likely to be more effective than the decision that is made without a consideration of these 10 points.
No, I totally agree, and I think we kind of I think your article also raises this. We kind of get confused with the technology that we have available in our phones, our computers, and things, and then we kind of rely on them to force us into a decision or just accept what's been given to us, instead of critically thinking and figuring it out ourselves. And these 10 questions that you've highlighted here also has some. It can guide us in using artificial intelligence. I've been using ChatGPT a lot, and if you don't have these 10 steps already set up in your mind, in your thinking processes, then there's real nothing that ChatGPT can do for you. What it just aggregates what everybody else wrote about something, and then it would be the worst thing ever if you just accept that. So it will make you dumber, as you said, and that's why I also think that I've heard Elon Musk say that within a few years that AI will take all over human thinking and human tasks, but that's not true. It's impossible for AI to do that. I've read from I think another article from Meta or Facebook's head of IT saying, but AI will never be smarter than humans. And it's for this simple reason that these 10 steps show us that we're uniquely human, and our ability to think and apply our minds and shape something. It's something that AI cannot do. It has to be prompted, it has to be guided. Yeah, so it's very interesting. And your questions is basically characterizing something clearly, whether it's a complex decision that you, as a tax practitioner, you have with a client, is asking you something to present to him, whether it's a submission you make to SARS. I think we trip up ourselves if we don't follow these 10 questions. Your last one, number 10, I'm just jumping from 1 to 10, and we can then conclude with that. What happens if it is effective or not? What are the related consequences? So that's also something that we, coming back to ESG, might not be considering. It's a complex issue. If we stop funding, I recently read an article about Standard Bank deciding in terms of their ESG policies to stop fund the development of coal plants or oil industries. And then I was thinking, but have they really thought this through? South Africa only contributes less than 0.3% of global CO2. It's a cheap way of getting ourselves out of poverty. Is it something that we should be doing? Versus, do we go green, get some funding from overseas? But you have to compare these things. So comparing jobs, growth, cheap energy, development, going green, and what the effects will be if we don't. Those are complex decisions. But before we make decisions, we have to come to number 10. What will the end thing look like? And I don't think we properly define that when we discuss complex issues. Just your thought about that.
Oh, okay. Yes, Nicolaas. That is a very good point which you raised. Yeah, that is a very good point which you raised. So, in this whole context, my point, especially when we get to number 10, is if we put together all the 9 questions of what is this thing, what does it do and how, why does it have to do that, what happens if it does not perform as expected, then the other thing is in the metrics and in the dynamics of either the operations of a company or an organization or the country. How important is this thing, and who gives it that importance? Let's say, for example, if it's ESG, for example, what I would have probably wanted or advocated for, let's say for Standard Bank in the context that you have highlighted, if they can have what is called, or what I propose as a smart decision report. Let's say if they propose to do this thing, they must write what is a smart decision report that outlines and answers these 10 questions. And therefore, it will be easy for uptake. It will be easy for adoption. It will be easy for people to get onto a certain initiative if these 10 questions are answered. So what happens if it's effective or not? Let's say ESG. Now, if let's say there is a serious investment which has been put towards this initiative and yet it does not work, is anybody held accountable? Yes, this is an important question. If nobody is held accountable and yet some people lost opportunities, let's say you are applying for a certain investment and you want some money from the bank and you did not qualify because of ESG, and yet probably your idea had more positive impact on the or in the society at large compared to the other person. Now, what happens if ESG does not work as outlined? What happens to those who were behind it? So now, if we have an answer to this question, it will also help people to decide better, to know that there is a consequence, and this consequence is written down. Let's say if it's a country, let's say it's an organization. If we decide to adopt this policy, if we decide to adopt to, let's say, sell this project, let's say if it's CIBA, if we decide to offer this as a product, if it fails, then what happens? So this must be there in the smart decision report. So if you, let's say, have the opportunity to read the whole book, it's just a small book, less than 20 pages. But if you read it, you will start to see that most of the decisions that people adopt and which do not have the expected results, those things were adopted because the question of what happens if it is not effective was not answered. Because if you knew that if I adopt this and it does not become effective, you will think through, are there no alternative routes that I could have taken earlier on? Then those routes could have been analyzed. So at the end of the day, when you adopt that which has failed, we also need to ask you, which alternatives did you look at and leave behind? What was the qualifying criteria to adopt this? So if you answer these 10 questions, the smart decision questions, you will start to make informed decisions that makes you also accountable. Because at the end of the day, there are people who decide. You still remember we were at the budget speech. One of the issues that was raised, I'm trying to figure out the name of, I'm sure it was Johan, was it? Johan. He was saying some of the policies that are adopted, even if it fails, nothing happens. But if there was something written down on paper that we are adopting this policy, and this is the smart decision report for adopting this policy, when that policy fails, then we know how to get back and to who. You understand?
No, it's very clear. I think when the whole thing about ESCOM became a real issue, I recall President Thabo Mbeki saying, obviously many years after, I think it was 2009 thereabouts, when the policy experts came to government and said, listen, we need to expand ESCOM and look at maintenance and things like that. And then government rejected that decision and allocated the funds elsewhere. So maybe they didn't follow your 10 questions and just thought this through, because we live in a limited resourced universe, and we need to make decisions. And there's no ultimate decisions. There's just choices between different outcomes. But we need to fully understand them and weigh them up against each other. So they didn't follow it then, and now we're sitting with real issues in our country, trying to revisit them. I think other big things would be the decision on the lockdowns. I know it was a very strange period, but it's now 3 or 4 years after the fact, and one wonders if they followed your 10-point questions, would they have decided something else?
Yes.
Of course, there's always different options and alternatives and things to do. And then going a bit micro to an individual tax practitioner, there are submissions that you have to make to SARS. There's decisions that you have to make about should you employ staff members, should you expand, should you do capital investments, and on what basis are you making these conclusions? Intuitively, or do you have a structured process? And I think this is what your book then does. So it's called The Smart Decision Handbook by Brian Kazungu. You can connect with Brian on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, Brian, for joining me today. You had me thinking there. I'm going to print these 10 things out and send them to my kids and make sure everybody follows them. And just any last words for our audience before we end our conversation?
Oh, okay. So yeah, basically, I wanted to give one example and we were discussing the Smart Decision Toolkit in general. But if you can allow me to, let's say, give one simple example where
Yes,
where I answered these 10 questions. For example, right now I have what I wrote I wrote what is called a customer congruence checklist. Now in this, let's say I am required by a certain organization, let's say ESCOM or any other company, to say, you talk a lot about customer service. Can you come and train our people about customer service? Or can you come and train our customer service department heads on customer service? So the basic things that I will have to help them understand is, one, what is a customer? And I will answer that as a customer is any person or organization with the desire and or means to buy your products or service towards the satisfaction of their own needs and wants. That is on what is that thing. You remember the questions that you were asking me. So that will be now we are giving, let's say, a perspective to these 10 questions. In this case, the issue is a customer. Let's say we are talking about a customer service. So what is a customer? Then number two, I go and say, what does a customer do and how? I would say a customer buys your products and services or supports your cause through the use of an agreed medium of exchange in a conducive environment. Number three, I would ask, okay, so if a customer is any person or organization with the desire and or means to buy your products, and does that using a certain medium of exchange, why does that customer do that? Because we need to understand something, we need to decide. So now that's when I would say a customer helps you to achieve your goals through patronage in exchange for his or her satisfaction that comes from using your product or service. For example, you are the CEO of CIBA, and you have accountants and other people as your clients in that organization. So what are you exchanging with them for their membership, for example? So now this is the point that you would need to answer, let's say when you are crafting products for your organization. Now, what happens if a customer does not do whatsoever is supposed to do in the right way? If you don't have customers, for example, you fail to accomplish your mission because of lack of revenue and cash flow. So the question 5 is, where is a customer situated in the matrix of your business operations? That is when I'll have to explain to people that a customer is the central or core feature of the mission or is the basis of your existence as an institution. For example, the Chartered Institute of, let's say, Business Accountants, it attends to accountants, and accountants attends to business people. So at the end of the day, if these things are put forth, it probably can also even help CIBA attend to its stakeholders, including customers who may be accountants and other stakeholders who are the government and policy makers and etc. So where is the customer situated in the matrix of your business? This is what I explained. Is a central or a core feature of the mission, or is the basis of your existence as an institution? So now the question 6 is, why does a customer occupy such a position? If I have described the customer as occupying a central or core feature, or as the basis of existence of an institution, why is it like that? That's when I would answer as, we consider customers to be central to your mission or very important in the dynamics of your business because they are the hinge and pivot of all your operations. Customers occupy the VIP section. Now, question 7 is, what happens if we change a customer's position? If he's no longer the central person, if it's no longer the central mandate of us as an organization, what happens if we are no longer prioritizing? Or even if we prioritize him more, what still happens? I say, as an answer to that, I say, when a customer is no longer the central or focal point of your institution, you will lose patronage, revenue, and relevance. So in all this, I am bringing those 10 questions that helps to decide into perspective. So now I will go to the last 3. Number 8, who is in charge of customer relations in organization, and why is that so? I say the entrepreneur is in charge of meeting the needs and wants of the customer or the audience through delegation of duties and responsibilities to people in his team. So these things, even when we were discussing about, let's say, ESG, the adoption thereof, or the Standard Bank issue, let's say, on giving loans, we need to understand who will be in charge of this operation and why. You see? So number 9, how is the effectiveness of your customer care assessed? The correct treatment of your client is seen through customer satisfaction, continued engagement, and in the accomplishment of your set goals. For example, let's say it's CIBA. If membership is remaining stable or is increasing, it means it can be also a sign that people have a certain value that they associate or they attribute to being members of CIBA. So it is a way of assessing whether you are being effective or not. But let's say if people start to move out and to join other organizations that into the same issue, that can be also a sign that probably our approach to attending to them is not that effective. So number 10, like what we discussed last time, is what happens if your customer care approach is not effective or is effective. If customers are seriously considered and valued in the affairs of your institution, it means that success is guaranteed. But if they are not given the attention they really deserve, it means that you are doomed to stumble and fall. So basically, I was just bringing into perspective the issue of the 10 questions. And in that book, I even explained that you can ask these questions on any matter. That is why in the article that you also quoted, an article that I wrote, which, if you are smart, let us build this thing together. This is where now I was saying, it cannot only be me describing, coming up with a topic and answering these 10 questions. You, as Nicolaas, you can do that. CIBA as an organization can do that. The government can do that. An organization can do that. A school can do that. But what if we populate together these 10 answers to these 10 questions on any subject and build a database which somebody can now go to check? Because obviously some answers that I can have on a same subject may not be the best, but there's somebody who's going to answer, let's say, the questions about the customer better than me. This person must be afforded a chance that if now as a school, let's say an institution, a university is crafting a curriculum, they need now a big database where they can draw thoughts, because at the end of the day, institutions of higher learning are actually training people on other people's thoughts and how effective they can be if adopted. So now this is the issue that I was rating I was bringing when I was talking about people now coming together. Nicolaas coming with his subject and answering 10 questions. Brian doing the same. CIBA is an organization doing the same. SARS, let's say it wants to tell us about tax. What is tax? What is income tax? Why is it like that? Who is in charge of it? If SARS can also come up with 10 questions like those, let's say if they are trying to bring a certain tax, let there be a decision report, a smart decision report, which everybody can see and probably given a chance to challenge. So basically, in summary, that is what I can say. Let us as people try to adopt smart decision tools. This is a smart decision tool that anybody anywhere can adopt at their own time. But probably because I came up with it, I wrote it, there's somebody who may say, hey, Brian, probably it's an organization. Can you come and help us to draft a smart decision report on this matter? Or it can be an individual. Brian, can you come and help me to draft a smart decision report on this subject? This is where I can then come in. But I've made it as simple as possible, giving those examples that anybody, anywhere, you can try to play around the smart decision toolkit. But I'm fully convinced beyond that, that if we as individuals and organizations adopt this approach of adopting a smart decision toolkit to make decisions, one, we make decisions based on accountability and out of open-mindedness. We don't now make decisions out of emotion and sentiment, which results in probably losses in organizations and heartbreaks in our personal relationships as people. So yeah, basically that is what I will summarize.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I have that was a very example that you gave, and making it for our listeners. I think I have to apply this, and I can recommend based on your insights that companies, if you are consulting, so it and the smart decision making. So please down from Brian. Brian, thank you so much for that, and I'm sure we'll have a future discussion.
You're welcome. Thank you, Nicolaas, and a very
thank you, Brian.
A big thank you to everyone who attended.
What do our defining moments look like? What do our defining moments look like? Just like this moment right now. They look like pride after achieving that long sought-after goal. All the small victories along the way that didn't feel momentous until we saw them in the rearview mirror. They look like the courage it takes to take that first big step. All the times we fail and rise again. And without even knowing it, cultivating an inner strength that is contagious along the way. They look like the inspiration that comes from knowing that we are not alone. They look like the human relationships that give us wisdom beyond what data ever could. They look like the curiosity that comes from exploring, that allow us to create and contribute. They look like education that unlocks our full potential, using our knowledge for impact. They look like choosing our own definition of success, over hiding, over hustling, over pretending. They look like others showing up and recognizing our efforts after all the times we already showed up for ourselves. They look like being bold enough to be extraordinary. look like you. Right now, right here. First, we help you see your defining moments. Then we help you seize them. We are the accounting body for everyone. We are the accounting body for you.